Welcome back to the ministry. God gave me this song a couple nights ago, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna just go ahead, go through it, and give y'all what I got. Because this is what has, in some cases, held up your God ordained spouse. Servant of God just released a written word, and in the written word, she was talking about there has been a spirit of backwardness, which is pretty much backsliding. They slid back into certain things because the enemy has been pressing them every single time. And I mean, some of them you would think that, how come every time I get my mind made up to do this, I slide back into this habit? That you would think that they would think, there's something else going on here besides me just sliding back into this relationship, into this habit, into this. And there's this era of backwardness that we as women of God need to pray for our God ordained spouses in relation to. So because of that, we gotta stand in the gap for that element, and that these things be broken off the final time, because this is something that the enemy's been using in order to keep them going back and forth and 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 back and forth. Because as long as they're in a level of double-mindedness, they ain't coming to us. They think that they get their mind made up, and then it's like a dog. I'm not calling our husbands the dogs, but like, you seen those old cartoons? It's an old cartoon. I don't remember which one it was, and it had a dog. And every time a squirrel would come by, the dog would say squirrel. That's the way the husbands are. As soon as, it may not be that particular, it may not be specifically the counterfeit, but a counterfeit opportunity. Whatever the enemy can use in order to distract them at the moment they're supposed to come to you, that's what he uses. He completely circumvents and moves around to get you, or get them to go in a direction that is around coming to get you, to hold them up. But God's going to get to a point that he's like, I love you enough, son, that I'm going to snatch this out from under you, and you're not going back to this. So, but God is going to bring it to alignment. God's going to make sure they come to you. God's going to make sure the choice is made, because he's going to make it obvious to them everything wrong with the other person. Which brings me to this song, My One Last Cry. Meaning I'm letting go, emotionally releasing. And I've seen about 3 or 4 visions of my God ordained spouse in tears about something. Don't know what it was. Maybe it was a relationship. I don't know. But I also know my God ordained spouse is an emotional person, so it could be anything. But in this song, it starts out, my shattered dreams and broken heart. Your God ordained spouse, they were thinking in their own terms when it came down to specific people. And they were in specific directions thinking about settling down with these people. But God knew that this person was not the person for them. And he knew that if they settled down with this person, they would end up at a later date regretting it. So God had to show them the error of this person's ways, and in seeing that, it shattered them. It broke their heart. Are mending on the shelf. Your God ordained spouse had to take time after coming out of his previous relationship to mend, to heal, to see himself, to forgive himself, to forgive that person, to go through that experience. I saw you holding hands. They may have seen the person that they were interested in. Some of them, let's just be honest, they were cheated on. Some of them, they were ready to marry him, found out. And that crushed them. Maybe they hadn't spoken anything to it about them or spoken to them about it, but God is a God of exposure. He's going to expose whatever that is, because he knows that if he doesn't, they're going to end up in the middle of it. It was going to come out one way or another. And God would rather it come out one way than for it to gone so far, and it'd have been like, it would have hurt even more. Standing close to someone else. Now I sit alone. For some of them, that was the case. The counterfeit was either doing this behind their back and thought they weren't never going to get caught, but the Lord exposed the situation and ended up for the situation to expose itself. I remember I was listening to a minister one time, and she said that she knew it was something off with one of her employees, and she asked the Lord to show her what it was. And the employee accidentally called her, thinking she was calling somebody else. And because the person was so drunk, they said some things out their mouth they should have never said to her, but they were too drunk to realize they were talking to her. God will do situations like that just to make sure that that person said, I need to make sure you see this. Happened to me a couple of times. I had a family member. I exposed to them a piece of information about something I was working on, and the person texted me thinking they were texting somebody else. And they said, oh, that person is just working on this little thing, and it's a bunch of foolishness and all that kind of stuff. And I said, oh, that's what you feel about that project, huh? They couldn't even speak to me to respond back to my text message because they didn't know that they told me. But once they realized that they texted it to me, oh, I ain't never hear from that person again. May God rest her soul. She passed away a couple years ago. Now, you remember the story I told you about the pastor? He's pretending to be a pastor and was sitting up there trying to use his clerginess to seduce young girls. And when I say young girls, some of them are looking as young as 16 years old. And that was the video I cussed in. And I did not take the cuss word out because of the fact that you know what I was saying. And that's why I was pissed off that bad. That's why I was cursing. Because I don't like nobody playing with the cloth like that. And exposure. God will expose things like that. Because that night, the night before the exposure came, I said, something off here, God. If there's something I need to know, let me know. I went to sleep that night. He woke me up and I sat straight up at 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, God, why am I sitting up at 1 o'clock in the morning? I should be asleep right now. Why did you wake me up? And the guy had posted something with a picture of him and a little teenage girl. And I'm sitting there like, oh, this is bad. God will expose. Wishing all my feelings was gone. Some of these men tried to numb out their feelings for these people when the revelation came. So some of them couldn't come to you because they was too busy numbing out trying to deal with that. Because if they came to you, they would have probably been hostile. And you'd have been like, who the heck is this? God, what you mean that this is my God or their spouse? They had to deal with themselves. I gave my best to you and nothing for me to do. They put all of themselves in that relationship. And y'all ladies that put yourselves into relationships, that put yourselves completely to these relationships you were in, that you held on with claws to keep that relationship going because of the fact that you had put so much of yourself into it. Some of these men have that same element about themselves. And that's why God's saying, you're perfect for this person. They're perfect for you and you're perfect for them because you love so hard and they love so hard too. That's why God's saying, once I get y'all together, it's going to make perfect sense. because you're going to love on them, healing their wounds, and they're going to love on you, loving yours. But have one last cry, one last cry. They needed to go through the process that they needed to go through in order to release the emotions attached to that relationship or several. Some of them had soul ties to much different people, and they needed to break the marine kingdom spirit. Do your research, and when you do that, you will come to find out that the marine kingdom is when you have made wives and or husbands of spirit spouses. Okay, some people in Christianity don't like to talk about that. It's like, oh, that's not Christian. The spirit's still there, whether you want to talk about it or not. So how about you deal with the spirit? Because what else you calling it? When that person is coming into your dreams, trying to have you marry them, trying to say that you can't spiritually divorce them and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, they had to go through all kinds of spiritual divorces and everything in the spirit realm and cry their last cries and all that kind of stuff. And they be sitting up there like, what did that word? They had to go through that in the spirit realm. Cut all soul ties, cut the silver cords, do all of that kind of stuff. Some of us had to do it for them because we had to stand in proxy because they didn't know what they was doing. But, yeah. So that they could have their one last cry. Before I leave it behind, I've got to put it out of my mind. They had to go through whatever their sorting process was. I just got a vision. It was from a movie I saw recently. What was that movie? And the guy, he was sitting at the bar drinking. Was it? Was that the perfect match? I think it was the perfect match. He went to the bar drinking after he saw that the woman had turned around, and the woman that he thought that he had fallen in love with had turned around, found out that she was getting married to somebody else. And he went to the bar after that work and started to drink himself stupid. He had to go through whatever his process was. Some of y'all goddamn spouses had to go through whatever their process was. If that meant getting drunk, then that meant getting drunk for them. Whatever it was that they used to get over it. Because maybe God was saying, I don't need you to go out and find another woman to sleep with. We're not going to do that this time. God may have given them leeway. If you want to smoke it out, go ahead. If you want to drink it out, go ahead. But don't be out here doing no stupidity. Acting like a fool. But process. Do whatever you need. Cry if you got to. But process. To stop living the lie. I guess I'm down to my last cry. I need some love to rain on me. God has been allotting them the ability to feel the love that we feel for them. And it has been almost as if it's spiritually raining upon them. That's what has calmed them to let them know, okay, let me bring you back and line you up. And they're saying, if this person is going to truly love on me, then I receive that. What do I have to do to get there? Still, I sit alone. They've sat in a alone place because God's like, I'm showing you this. I'm giving you wisdom of this. I'm letting you know this is what's available to you, but you're not going to be able to walk into it. You can't walk into it until I see that you have healed. So I'm going to have you, just like y'all know God put you in an isolated, incubated state. And you were sitting up there like, well, I'm ready. No, you weren't. God said, no, you're not. You didn't deal with this yet. And you was like, oh, I'm ready. And God's like, no, you're not. Let me show you this side of yourself that you didn't deal with. That's what they've been going through too. It may not have taken as long because as soon as God notified them of that, they were like, okay, I realized that. And he gave them revelation as to what it was, especially if we've been standing in prayer for them for what it is that they needed to deal with. They started dealing with those things. Wishing all my feelings were gone. God, you know how God did you. You know how God did you. You know he made you feel those feelings. Some of y'all was like, I'm good. God, we good. Surfacely, you was good until God took you into a fast, took you on all fruit, all vegetable, all whatever it was. And you was sitting there crying your eyes out for no reason sometimes. And you was sitting there like, God, why am I sitting there crying? And God was like, I needed to work that out in you. Precisely. And he had to do the exact same thing with them. Had to make them go through their crying time, had to make them feel all the feelings, everything. Purge them. And some of them had to go through a level of deliverance where to them they may have felt like, I ain't been sick for years. Why am I sick now? Because they had to go through a level that God had to internally purge them deep within. So he made them go through a level of sickness that would completely flush them out. The headaches, the migraines, the nausea, all of that. They had to go through all of that. You know, because some of y'all went through it. Y'all know y'all had to go through it when you wasn't even to that degree with it. And it was just you going through deliverance from your generational curses. So they had to go through it in relation to these relationships. You ever cried so hard you got nauseated? They had to get over that person. That there was nothing for them to do. They had to go through a process that they could not avoid. And there was nothing they could do about it. But have the cry. They had to deal with their emotions. They had to deal with that part of themselves before leaving it all behind. Meaning they were going to emotionally, spiritually shut that door. And they are doing that. They had to put the situation out of their head, out of their mind. Stop living those lies. Having to be strong cause they rounded out, their life goes on and on and on. If they didn't release it and let it go, they realized that they were going to stay in the exact same cycle, repeating the same thing over and over. And at some point, you got to get tired of that. It's like, I keep coming back here and keep ending up in the same place, getting too old for it. And they're like, look, I don't want my life to continue to stay like this. I got to let you go. I'm going to dry my eyes right after I end my one last cry. They are relinquishing and letting this cry be the last cry. I'm not going to spend no more time on this. I'm going to let this be a spiritual purging of self. And I am no longer going to cry about this thing. I'm going to let all of it out in this cry. One last cry. I'm going to put you out of my mind for the very last time. Who was that? Somebody did a video. I think it was Loving Miracles with Ray. And she talked about how these men got to a place where they were having that final conversation where even they may have cried with the person saying, I'm done. I'm over. And the person knew it was over. when they came to. Some of them had avoided it because they didn't want to have that conversation. But God was showing them, you got to let this go. And with that being said, Deani Neves did a video where she talked about the these counterfeits had come to a point where they prayed to God themselves, didn't realize they may have been praying, but they may have said to themselves, if this is it, please show me that it's over. And when they had the last conversation, argument, what have you, with your God ordained spouse, they either let them know it's over, or they walked away, and the way in which they reacted to that last conversation, they knew they wasn't coming back. They got whatever closure information they needed to know it was done, because they knew they were living a lie, and your ordained spouse knew they were living a lie. So they guess they're down. I guess I'm down. I guess I'm down to my one last cry. Okay? So that's what God wanted to share. Let me see if that was Loving Miracles by Ray. Hold on. I believe it's Loving Miracles with Ray, but I do not know exactly which video it is. It's one here that is called Release What Doesn't Belong to You and Step into the New. I'm not sure if that's it. And it's another one here that could also be someone returning for a second chance. Don't listen to negative influences of others. So, yeah. So, if you like her stuff, you can go in and you can kind of skim through it and see. But I believe it was one of her words. I just don't know the title of it. So, yeah. So that's pretty much everything I had to say. That was the last song. Until next time, y'all. Bye-bye.